Thank you, Alex. It's great to see everybody. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Stephanie Harrington, Chair of the ASEE Corporate Member Council, and we are one of 5 of the ASEE councils, and our focus is on bringing industry and academia into the same conversation. We're really focused on impact. We work with our industry partners, STEM organizations, academic leadership across ASEE and around this whole area. And we try to strengthen partnerships and make sure that engineering education keeps pace with our workforce needs. So today we're very, very excited to present our first session of our On Air series. On Air stands for Academia Industry Roundtable. We're going to go ahead and do this quarterly. We have today's our first one. We already have another one scheduled in the next quarter. And these are an opportunity to highlight real examples of collaboration, share our insights from the leaders working in this. All these people are at the intersection of industry and engineering education. So today we are featuring our CMC Excellence in Engineering Education Collaboration Award winner. And this award went to Siemens Digital Industries Software and all their work on the first ABET-accredited, ABET-recognized microcredential. This is really a great example of things we're seeing right now around skills-based learning, credentials, new pathways between education in the workforce. So feel free during the webinar to go ahead and drop any questions in the Q&A, and the presenters will answer that as we go through. And I do want to mention before I introduce all of our panelists, I'd like to let you all know that we have our second webinar scheduled on May 19th, same time. And you can sign up at the link, and I'm going to go ahead and put the link to this Corporate Member Council page in the chat if you all want to sign up for the next one. And we're going to be talking about the CMC collaboration with one of ASEE's other divisions, the CIPD, that looks at industry practitioners and how to enhance engineering education and workforce development. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is going to be our moderator, and that's Caitlin Tyler, and she's from ANSYS Synopsys. And she's currently our chair-elect of the CMC. And she has brought us amazing experience conducting industry tools and practices with engineering education. And then our speaker is Dora Smith, the Senior Director at Siemens Digital Industries Software and the past chair of the CMC. And she's also been a leader in advancing industry academia collaboration for many, many years. We're very fortunate to have them with us today, and I will turn this over to them. Thank you all very much.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I just wanted to say, as moderator, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really excellent presentation. We have Dora here, as Stephanie mentioned, but Siemens did not work alone on this ABET-recognized microcredential. I'm using the correct terminology here. So we also have some of Dora's colleagues from UC Boulder who are able to join us on the call, which is excellent. So I'm just going to turn this over to Dora. You take it away. But everyone, please put questions, comments, concerns, everything in the chat. We want this to be, a discussion. So please do so. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks, Stephanie. Stephanie was kind. She said many, many years. So I've been around this ASEE Corporate Member Council for some time. And so I really encourage those of you, if you're members of ASEE and aren't familiar with it, come learn more about the mission of it. We're meant to really be that voice of industry across all of ASEE. And for those of you who are joining us from industry, if you're not members in the Corporate Member Council, I really encourage you to join, because this is really where we come together and find some of the best collaborations to do. It's part of what connected us with ASEE, with ABET, and then eventually with UC Boulder on the collaboration we're going to talk about today. I do want to give a shout out, and I'll put some LinkedIn links in the chat to the amazing team from CU Boulder. So Dr. Christy Bozek has been collaborating with us the longest on this, was formerly at CU Boulder and now at Duke. But Christy has been instrumental to this collaboration, and also joined by Wendy Martin, who's the interim faculty director. Shane is also with us, the online program manager, and Kayla, who is the learning experience designer and they were really critical to us achieving this ABET recognition. So they're going to pipe in and share some things as needed. So please, again, keep the discussion going in the chat, ask your questions so that we can bring their voices into the discussion. And now I'm going to attempt to share my screen and hope all works out well there. All right, are you guys able to see title slide? Can someone just give me a heads up?
Yes, we can.
Okay, then let's get started. So we want to talk about really transforming the future workforce and how we see these ABET recognized credentials really playing a key role in that. And the agenda, I just wanted to give you guys a baseline with some slides, but do want this to be interactive and happy to stop throughout and discuss as we go. But wanted to share just a little bit of that industry perspective on the current state of the workforce. Certainly a lot of digital transformation happening there, but also talk about this transformation in credential quality assurance. It's really been a interesting and amazing effort that ABET has gone down. And so we want to talk about that more with you. And really at the core of it, we're trying to really deliver these industry crafted, but very focused on learner needs and learner driven recognized credentials. So that's what's up on the agenda. To start with, I just want to emphasize, I think it's, all of us see this. We have this rapidly changing pace of technology, processes, and we know we all need a faster mindset and skill set adaptation. And so when you look at some of the stats out there, I believe this is a McKinsey study. We pay attention to this a lot as a software provider in this industry. And I think somebody else might be driving the slides. With 87% of executives viewing skill shortage as a critical barrier to the digital transformation efforts. And so it's really important that they need the workforce transformation as much as they need the technological transformation. And so that's what we're trying to address. A few other stats I wanted to share with you and just give my personal perspective, having been in this engineering education space for about 12 years now. This is the first time in the last 2 years that I've seen really the demand and more so the alignment coming together across the ecosystem, across employers, universities, and really the quality bodies. That is what has changed. And sorry, it looks like it's timing me, so I'll move faster. From an employer standpoint, 85%, and this is from a Test Gorilla, continues to increase. More and more of them are using skills-based hiring. More universities are planning to adopt credentials. And then this quality signal that really seeing, this is a WEEF IBM employer survey that looked at employers really valuing digital credentials as that indicator of job readiness when it's issued by reputable organizations and independently verified. And so these three really coming together are critical. And then I just wanted to share a little bit of perspective as we actually did a workshop with ABET at the CIEC conference. So these next two slides, just giving you a little bit more of a lay of the land there of what do these responsible quality assurance credentials really mean in today's landscape. They serve as true enablers of this workforce development and transformation. They help HR really identify. If you're going to have skills-based hiring, you got to have a way to really cultivate and identify that talent. And then it really sets learners apart. We'll talk a little bit more about learner perspective in a little bit. It provides that assurance really and that quality stamp to the credential ecosystem and addresses the critical needs for lifelong learning, particularly within current technological landscape. And so this is why ABET plays such a key role. And we have, Stephanie on the line here. I think we have Michael as well from ABET. But, just want to emphasize ABET having this quality assurance really brings the rigor now to credentials that we've never had before. And so ABET was very strategic in selecting a couple of key pilot partners across industry, academia, and some organizations to go through this quality assurance review. It's a process they built up over many years with a lot of feedback from this ecosystem. And they have this strong established quality framework we already know from accreditation and really adapting to what's needed for this recognition process. So we were honored along with Boulder to be a part of this pilot, and we'll talk through a little bit of what we experienced. And then here's really where I want to emphasize, what learners need and want, right? This trust and value They really want to look at skills-based learning as a priority now in their higher education. They believe that these credentials are going to give them that competitive edge. I can tell you this even from personal experience as a parent, two sons in college now. They need to augment what they're really getting from a degree standpoint with these recognized credentials, and that they're really more likely to enroll in degree programs that now include a certificate or skills validation component. And that's, in part, I think what's driving some of the change in the engineering education side. And then a little more from the industry perspective, we've always talked about the skills gap in industry, saying what they need, and academia asking what should be removed, and how do we really bridge this skills gap. And there still is one in the early career, and there's some things we'll talk about in these credentials that help address that so that we can have more agile and adaptive workforces. Those are really aimed at that industry-ready kind of competence. And we'll talk specifically about one a little bit, so you'll see what that looks like from an employer perspective. And then there's the speed, right? The advancement keeps outpacing. But I want to also look at this mid to late career, because we are all learners, and we see this digital transformation driving the need for that ongoing lifelong learning for all of us, and us being able to be ready for change across our organizations. And I thought it was interesting. Some of you that may have followed me on LinkedIn, so I recently shared an article from TechEdge, and the journalist that was interviewing me and some others around these credentials actually went and took one of our credentials, right? And she is mid-career, and she just had some interesting comments she found value in being able to learn in these bite-sized chunks and really gain some knowledge and a little bit of expertise in some of the emerging technologies around AI, and particularly around what we're seeing happening in automation. Particularly the one we've done with Boulder, really looking at how it impacts sustainability, the whole human-centered innovation. We'll talk more about the learning objectives around that. But she found it gave her skills a useful boost and really helped keep her knowledge current. And so that's where we're really finding this fit for some of these credentials across all kinds of learners at every stage of their career. And so I want to share a little bit more about what we're trying to specifically drive into some of these example credentials to transform that future workforce, and how. And we really look at it from three different perspectives. That we need to drive this change in the digital mindset around digital transformation technologies and what you need to understand about implementing those in industry, but also digital skill set, because there's times you're going to dive a little bit deeper, and then bringing it all together in application, because you really need these comprehensive learner journeys. You need to give them pathways, and you really need to ignite the excitement around how people bring that digital mindset and skill set together. And so this is where we try to provide some human touch points and mentoring along the way. And I'll just emphasize that this is really where we're trying to in no way replace, but really have a strategic augmentation to degree pathways. And so our credentials are really focused on where can we bring that higher education and industry together? Where can we bring some insights, particularly from a Siemens perspective, from some of our customers and industry partners, and really align with the latest in market research. And I'll share a little bit more on some of the efficient onboarding, because we've driven some of our credentials specifically where we had very long form onboarding programs in the past. And again, coming back to that digital mindset and digital skill set. And so this has been a little bit of our journey. I'd say it's about I think it's 2 years now. I think it was 2 years ago as we were starting to talk with ABET about this partnership at their symposium and other gatherings. And then we had our large customer conference about 2 months later, and we announced that we're going to be part of this pilot program. And then within a year from that, we're able to announce our first recognition. What was really great for us is to be partnered with an academic institution. And so having CU Boulder there as a strategic partner and guide, when an academic institution that understands the rigor of ABET from an accreditation standpoint and quality standards in general, the pedagogy that we need around learning outcomes, they really provided the structure and helped us as an industry player who had not been down that path before to guide us in this journey. So with that, here are a few of the digital mindset credentials that we have launched. The first one was the one that we did with CU Boulder around circular economy. I'll show you a little bit more what is in that 9-course certificate, and my colleagues from there can also speak more to it where you have questions. Mid last year, we also launched one around expedite skills for industry. This was based on our own Siemens onboarding program. We have about a 5 to 6 month rich onboarding program where we take people through a lot of deep dive into industry. We explain some of the more technical concepts around EDA and PLM. I'll talk about those in a minute. And really the future of industry, see where things are headed, what are some of the emerging technologies. And then the latest one we did last fall is a little more focused on the student learners and where they really need to upskill around the perspective they need from business acumen as well as technology in the competitions that they're participating in. So that's our newest one. And so here I want to share a little bit more about the one that we stood up with CU Boulder around design for circular economy. And I'll stop here in a minute, let them share some perspective there if they'd like to. But this is where we really partnered with them to look at, hey, what do engineering and technical students need to understand around sustainable engineering, and how do we drive some practical skilling in that area? But we found there's also students from related fields that really have a passion for sustainability. We've over the years had a number of immersive design challenges that we usually do with a customer. And when we launch those, students are often taking this micro-credential first, so they get that perspective and understand how to bring that lens into the competition. And then, our goals here, really trying to equip learners with that base sustainable engineering knowledge. What are some of the latest practices, use cases, and then really trying to enable that pathway that they can achieve, course completion that leads to a specialization completion. And what's really novel about what CU Boulder brought to play here was a 4-credit option. And so in the design, we really were partnered here where both provided some content and some subject matter expertise, and really wanted to provide this in a very large scale open access platform. So it is out there on Coursera. And the next few slides, I can go through quickly. They get through the learning objectives through each of the major set of 3 courses, but you can see just a little bit of the overview of the course content there. And I'll pause here and see, if Christy or anybody else from the team wanted to make any initial comments about the scope of this micro-credential.
Sure, I can jump in. Thanks, Dora. Hi, everybody. My name is Christy Bozick, and I'm an instructor and I'm an instructor in this credential program, and helped partner with Siemens to get it launched. In particular, I want to kind of even just back up a second and talk about the partnership and what really helped sort of drive this sort of perfect marriage of industry and higher ed collaboration, as Dora was talking about. We've talked about the emerging needs that industry is needing and the skills gap that exists in bringing those needs to the workforce. And we've, for those of us in higher ed have seen that as well in terms of connections with between our students and with industry as a whole. So what this allowed, this partnership allowed us as a university and a program is to take this subject matter knowledge and our instructors who have, research and teaching in this very emerging area, and to partner with a company who has not only sustainability as a core of who they are as a corporation, but as well as lifelong learning and education as a focus that is important to them as a corporate goal and ethics, right? So by allowing this partnership, by working with them in this partnership, they allowed us, subject matter expertise, data sets, white papers, really the connection to make what we're saying come to life for students and see how it applies in the real world. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Siemens Digital Industries Software and the partnership and allowing, all of their subject matter expertise and making it available to us as well.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, and if you'll stay on there too, I'm just going to show,
Sure.
we weren't going to dive into these in a ton of detail, but the next 3 slides just give you guys an outline of the learning objectives under the 3 discipline and categories. And I just want to emphasize, this is again where CU Boulder brought that academic rigor to us, right? And really understanding how do we need to break down these topics and then where do we dive deeper? And then we could kind of map that to, hey, where do we have use cases and experts across Siemens that we could bring to bear? What are some of the other resources? So it was really important, again, that we have the rigor that's expected, in academia so that we trust this and would help support as we try to go down a quality assurance path. So there's a little bit of around this applied sustainability. Christy, any key highlight you'd want to point to on this one?
Really taking the high level approach to sustainability and doing analysis of the skills that industry in particular is wanting from, sustainably trained or sustainably education, right? A sustainable based education for their incoming workers or recent graduates. So really, it was industry driven learning outcomes and objectives.
Great. And you can see there, this was really about, the baseline around circular economy, really understanding some of the business. You see triple bottom line accounting there, right? How does it really play out in the financial side? So those are just a few of the other pieces. And then diving into operations and supply chain management, having 3 specific courses that really go into more here, understanding the productivity impact, the overall ecosystem, corporate social responsibility. And so these are just a little bit more of the objectives here. Chrissy, any comments on this one?
It's also important to think of it through the lens of the partnership at CU Boulder is with the Masters of Engineering Management program. So these objectives will have will be tied to some of the things that are taught within the discipline of engineering management as well.
And that might be a good place, Christy, for us to just, I mentioned it very briefly at the beginning, but what I found unique about what you were offering with this was the 4-credit option for that. Would you want to make a few comments about that and how you built that in?
So one of the things that we were particularly interested in developing this program as a whole is not only the skills-based learning, but we wanted to make sure that we could develop this program that aligns with our Coursera master's degree program as well that CU Boulder offers on Coursera. So we made sure that we designed our learning objectives and outcomes that can be skills-based learning and training. But then learners have an option to do a deeper level of assessment that would make it a 4-credit based assessment that they can take to make sure that to sort of prove that they've achieved the outcome. So there's different layers, right? You've got the skills based, which is one assessment, and then those 4-credit learners who are taking it like toward a degree plan have a deeper level of assessment.
Yeah, and I think that's great for as you guys are considering micro-credentials and the level and depth that where there's opportunities for credit. I think it's really great to create those additional pathways for students. All right, and then the third in the specialization is this product design for circular economy, and this is an area where I think we leaned in even heavier to really kind of look at what are some of those sustainability principles, circular product design frameworks, certifications. And this is where we try to weave in, use cases that are across, some of the Siemens customer base. I don't know if any of you follow like the Consumer Electronics Show, but we had a one based on a PepsiCo example, right? So we really try to bring in those examples of real world customer use cases and the decisions they had to make along the way or lessons learned And that's what we continue to try to update the course content to the latest and greatest there. So I'll stop there, see if any questions or comments so far that we should answer. Otherwise, I will show a little bit more of the next credential.
So there is someone in the chat who is asking a few questions about like how these courses are being taken. So asking, is the course online asynchronous? Is there any in-person element? And also wondering, and I'm not sure you guys have the metrics for this, but if the students who have completed the program are all from mechanical engineering.
I can jump a little bit in about the course delivery in particular. The platform that we use for the specialization is through the Coursera platform. So students, as long as they have a access to Coursera, can sign up for the certification and specializations. All of the content is asynchronous, self-paced. Students can learn at their own pace. If they decide they have access to all of the content at one time, and if they decide to do the deeper level of assessment for credit, can pay the associated tuition, and that unlocks the deeper assessment modules for them to take. But it is all asynchronous with no requirements for any live interaction. And it is supported through CU Boulder faculty and TAs in terms of office hours, questions, et cetera. So it's run similar to that program.
Great. And then I think we can come back to some of the learner specifics from a diversity standpoint. I usually get a lens that's across all of our credentials, so it may not be specific to just this one on circular economy. And what's interesting is when you do put them in these open online learning spaces, we often see, just with where the workforce is right now, a skewing of a mid-40s age level that is from multiple disciplines. Some may even have bachelor's and master's degrees, but this is something they weren't taught in school, right, or in their career. And so they're going back to school, for it. So we'll see if we got some more details and stats we can share with you guys in the comments, or if somebody else wants to share. Great. Okay, well, let me, and keep the questions, comments coming. I just got a few more slides to give you a flavor of a few others. So this is our Siemens Expedite Skills for Industry Global Credential. And like I mentioned, that was based on an onboarding program that we have at Siemens. We have one called Genesis and one called Associate Engineer. And these are really aimed at people who go to work in our electronic design automation technology side of the house, or in our PLM, Product Lifecycle Management, which is the design and manufacturing side of the house. And then we rounded that out with really trying to understand industry foundations that covers everything from the 411 on industrial metaverse, really that life cycle of the product, and what do digital threads mean, as well as these emerging technologies. And this will continue to update and change on the far right, which is really around the future of industry. And then wanted to point out here on the bottom, when we went out to our customers and really surveyed them over the last couple of years, where do you see the most in the skills gap? Where should we focus? They emphasized these durable skills needing to be integrated and weaved throughout. And so not just having standalone kind of digital technical mindset skilling, but really how do we weave in that, how they leverage and apply these durable skills. And so we've been real intentional about integrating those throughout each of those modules. So this gives a view of what that course, that specialization looks like over 4 courses, on an average about 10 hours per course. And then this is what it looks like from a badging standpoint, and how the learners can really show their experience. They get these verifiable digital badges that they can showcase by course, as well as the full specialization completion. And then they can share that in the talent directories externally, as well as on social media profiles. So that gives you a little bit more of a flavor of one we developed standalone. And here were just a few of the quotes I wanted to share with you from, both external employer customers of ours, as well as academia from a dean perspective, and a recent graduate. And so this is, the recent graduate really pointed out that having this on there, on the resume, led to more conversation in the interview process about the specific things that were called out around industry 4 and 5.0, as well as AI ethics. So she was able to kind of talk about that in the interview process to get the job. And then engineering dean here, this is actually from Rose-Hulman Institute, really sees this as a signal, as we talked about at the beginning, right, to potential employers that a student kind of went over and above, that they're willing to do the things that they see the most value added to engineering organizations, and really seeing that objective verification. And then a large A&D customer is actually piloting this now with their new hires. So similarly to us, they wanted to speed up the onboarding and look at how they could save time there from the microcredential, and eventually maybe even hire from this microcredential pool of talent in the future. So that's a little bit of the feedback that we want anyway, and the design and improvement of this, but also plays out as you seek ABET recognition, and in that process that we have that continuous improvement and that feedback loop. And so this is my last slide, and just want to then open it up for some conversation with you. But what I just provide is some advice. It really is important to strategically partner so that you've got that shared trust. I spoke a little bit about this. You heard some comments from Christy, but this is one where we were introduced to CU Boulder around this idea of, hey, there's this need around circular economy and what you both may be able to bring to bear there. But to get to a partnership where we both really trusted each other and saw the value of what each organization brought to play is really important to have this collaboration run smoothly. And then, the rigor, hopefully you saw that we said around those intentional learning outcomes and getting quite detailed on what we wanted to try to teach and have the learners achieve. And then what's really important as you look at the process for quality assurance from ABET or other bodies, that you have to really ensure that you've got that documented process for both content review, assessment review, that you're looking at the learner progress and feedback. And then that just overall, you're starting with that focus on quality and relevance. That's why we spend a lot of time going back to our ecosystem, to customers and partners, again, seeing where the skills gaps and needs are, and then showing where we have evidence of those assessment results and how we're looping back in that stakeholder feedback so we can support that continuous improvement process. And so I just, will emphasize, I think if you're a university exploring micro-credentials, start with trust and not scale. Scale will come. And that the blueprint we've really learned with this is, hey, co-create and really look at where you can provide some unique value, and then validate, right, with external quality reviews and assurance. So we're really proud of the work that we developed here, and happy to share with you more of the journey, more of the process. And so now I think, we'll just open it up to some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dora, and everyone who's been chiming in to answer questions. I see that Shane is busy in the chat answering some of these questions. So thank you very much for doing that. So yeah, just for people who maybe aren't reading the chat, there was a question about a time limit. Do they have to complete the asynchronous course in a certain amount of time? No, you don't. Personally, I think that's wonderful, especially, you always have such high hopes at the beginning of the semester. You start the class, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, midterms, and it's months later. We also had a question come in through the Q&A function that I wanted to be answered live. There's a lot of question about the assessments used in the certification, and I personally have this question as well as an industry member who's also starting to be more interested in this micro-credential space. I know that obviously this is a very rigorous part of it. So if you guys could give a few words.
I'm happy to jump in here, and if anyone who knows on the CU Boulder side assessments a little bit better than me, as the instructor, wants to add something, they can do that as well. But you can see from the numbers, I think the large number of 20,000 have enrolled in Design for the Circular Economy courses. That is a lot of grading for one particular professor, right? So The way I built my assessments in particular were auto-graded quiz with a deeper set of assessments for the for credit. I went with the auto graded because there isn't any way even one or two or three or 10 TAs could manage a large assessment grading pool of 20,000 assessments, if you will. So it was like like multiple choice quiz.
I mean, that makes a ton of sense. That's a lot of people, as you said, to grade for. Thanks so much. And then we have question of, yeah, are you including basically when, right, they've posted this digital badge, is there something within the badge that says, right, like Dora, you mentioned that one of them is roughly 10 hours. Is that information that's included in like the metadata for the badge so that, employers and whoever else can look and say, okay, so the student took about this amount of time to get this assessment?
That's a really great question, Caitlin. I believe the data's there. Now, how it's extracted, we currently use Credly as that talent directory, and are looking at some options for that in the future, for what level of detail can be provided. So that's a great question and some feedback on how we can provide more visibility to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if there's
that's
more from the Boulder team on how they look at that.
There was one question that was sort of responded to seat time and an estimate for actual student contact hours for teaching and learning. We follow the same procedures and rules as we do for our on-campus program. So the student engagements, assignments, studying lectures should reflect approximately the same amount of time and effort as an on-campus program. Obviously, we're not giving, a full 3-hour lecture online. It's chunked up. There are reading assignments, there are engagement assignments, there's analysis required outside work to do. So we use the expertise of our learning experience designers to help us develop activities and really evidence-based, pedagogically sound modules that will meet that sort of seat time requirement as well as be impactful to their learning.
awesome. Thanks so much. I have a question that Dora, I think this one is geared a bit more towards you. Obtaining feedback specifically from industry on relevant learning objectives, things like continuous improvement to these micro-credentials. Do you have the industry version of an IAB, industry advisory board? What's your take on that?
Yes, we've done it multiple ways. We have, I mentioned when we announced that we were doing the pilot partnership with ABET, was at our large customer event. And so we have those in each of the 3 zones around the world annually. And so we do workshopping there where we get it from a whole set of, customer types. And then by industry, it's like an IAB, Caitlin. We have these industry advisory committees. They usually come together a couple times a year themselves. As well as do some online gathering in between those sessions. And so we circulated with them. So we've been pretty intentional of first, here's the feedback. What do you need? What are the gaps? And then we came back with, here are the learning objectives, feedback. How would you adjust? Where do you think we should spend more time? And then as we beta these and got feedback from learners, okay, does this resonate? Anything else? And so we tried to create several different touch points based on what we're seeing to, again, get that pulse check from them. And plus guidance, because things change as fast as everything keeps changing, right? We may need to adapt. So that's our process right now.
That's super rigorous and that's awesome. And as you said, I mean, especially the sustainability one, my goodness, that changes quite rapidly. So I can see definitely wanting to keep your pulse, your fingers on that pulse.
And that was one question I saw, Caitlin, someone asked about, and I don't know if it was about the circular economy credential or about the Siemens Expedite Skills for Industry, but about how suitable they are for someone with an accounting and finance background. And, Christy can speak a little more to this, but from Siemens' perspective, I say very suitable because there are some things that are taught in there For example, at Siemens, like many large companies, right, we have certain goals against a sustainability framework. And I'll just put a link. People are interested in learning more about that to our degree framework. And so there are implications to, right, how you financially account and report out on that. And so having a baseline is really important. And then I always like to bring my personal mom perspective. I made my son go through our expedite skills for industry, right? He's in business school. He hasn't quite figured out the discipline he's going for. And I'm like, you need to understand a little bit more about the industry context. You need to get some business acumen, just kind of learn a little bit of the language. And so I found it personally helpful for him as well as he's navigating business school.
For the sustainability credential, absolutely. It's appropriate for any discipline. If there are any sort of complex mathematical formulas, primarily in the design course, those are taught in advance so that learners are prepared for whatever assessment they have. We teach them everything they need to know along the way.
That's great. So one question that's come in is a little bit about like the sort of the ABET recognition process. Like how long did it take to actually be able to get that? Does it require a self-study, similar to maybe what institutions have to go through to be accredited? So if you guys could share a little bit, and I knew I was going to see Stephanie's camera pop on. So if you guys could give a bit of those details, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Stephanie, if you want to kick us off.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start and then I'll let you all talk about your experience. But the Recognition of Credentials program, I'll put a link in the chat so that everybody can get to our website. It was launched last fall and it is a very agile, streamlined process. I actually got to be one of the evaluators on this micro-credential, which was really fun and interesting. It is a really fantastic process. It is relatively inexpensive. It is quick. It's about a 3-month process, can be 3 to 5 basically, but we try to do 3 or 4 sets a year of groups coming in. And I could talk for hours about it, but I don't want to take up the time. I really want you all to talk about your experience from your side. And I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat for anyone else who is interested in the Recognition of Credentials program.
And I'll just make a comment from the industry side, again, having been in this space for some time and knowing about the time, it takes obviously for the rigor of an accreditation to see what ABET put in place to allow this to be much quicker and agile, right, to industry needs. I was pretty impressed with the speed of it. And, our experience in really just trying to get our credentials launched, get that learner feedback, right, we could focus there. And then when we were ready to move through this quite quickly, but still having a lot of rigor, a lot of, the magic and beauty of the ecosystem of ABET, right, is a lot of volunteers who volunteer their time to do these reviews for both accreditation and the recognition, and doing it on a volunteer basis, and yet making themselves available to streamline that on a very quick turnaround. But the rigor of the questions that came back, I mean, yes, we had to do the initial self-assessment. The rigor of the questions were very sharp and on point. And so, yeah, I saw that rigor played out as well. Now, Christy, if you want to share, anybody else from the Boulder team?
Well, having coming from a college that has an ABET accredited undergraduate programs, we knew sort of what to maybe expect in terms of the type of questions around the rigor and continuous improvement and lifelong learning. So we really did just lean on to our teams to help answer those questions. We recently had just gone through an ABET for one of our programs. So we were prepared in terms of what to expect. So it was just applying the knowledge and tools to something a little bit different, in terms of the skills-based assessment versus, a full program or, major accreditation. But really just leaning on those resources within our own college to help document best practice and just really make sure that what we were what we're actually doing in reality and measurement is what we're reporting that we're doing, and that we've set those processes up from the very beginning, just to make sure that we've got a successful outcome in terms of recognition.
That's great. Thank you all so much. Um, I'm circling back. Oh, business phrase. Sorry about that. Coming back to the topic of assessment. So there are a couple of questions about, right? Obviously, if we're talking Bloom's taxonomy, things like apply can be a bit tricky to do with, true, false, multiple choice, these types of questions. So how did you guys balance that? Which is, I feel like, a classic assessment problem that everyone deals with.
And it's not an easy way, and I'll let Dora talk about it from the other program as well. But it's not an easy way to assess through these large multiple choice auto graded assessments. When it comes to sort of unlocking the deeper, higher level assessment, there are a variety of different methods we use at ASEE Boulder, and I'll let one of the learning experience designers or the director jump in if they like, because I'm not nearly as good at it as they are. But there are different ways that we did that through peer-to-peer grading for project-based work. So in a couple cases, we have, before you can move on to, and again, this is for the graded modules, right? So before you can move on to the next module, you'll have to use a very detailed rubric to grade somebody else's work. And then they grade yours. And if you can set however many, like 3 to 5 with an average grade from there, or TA-based grading, whatever it may be. There are a variety of different assessments. I've used just the multiple choice and the peer graded, and then using TAs to both audit as well as problem solve, or to do some direct grading whenever there's not enough peer or a quicker response as well. So if my colleagues have anything to add, much better ways, they're better at that than I am.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I'm Kayla. I am a learning experience designer who contributed to this project. And the way that the micro-credential is set up assessment-wise is how we recommend assessments are set up in any collegiate or well-designed learning experience, which is they're scaffolded throughout the journey. And so as you progress through the course, you're getting practice opportunities to play with the knowledge that is just being learned. And then those official benchmark opportunities, which really test what you've learned. And these courses are not just all multiple choice questions. These instructors have designed case studies, hands-on practical scenarios where learners are applying what they've learned to their own jobs. They're looking at what other pioneers in industry are doing and comparing those to success criteria. And so while, we rag on multiple choice questions, they do serve a purpose. They help learners really establish a foundation. There are also opportunities to provide benchmarks in how to think critically. And then that's just kind of the base layer of what this micro-credential provides. It also gives learners those hands-on practical opportunities to make their knowledge their own and prove that they can recognize as well as recall some of the important learning that then will be useful on their job or in any sustainable leadership opportunity. Wendy, I saw you come off camera.
I did come on camera because I wanted to address this with the assessment. One of the things that we do on the backside is look at the validity and reliability of the rubric with respect to the three people who would use it, and that is the instructor and the course facilitators and the peers. And so we have good and solid evidence that how an instructor would give an assessment according to the rubric is very similar to what a peer would do. So that is something that I wanted to throw out there as well. In addition to the good practice with scaffolding, is that we do assess our own assessment processes on the back end. So just be aware that we're doing that with statistics.
I think that was one of the interesting lessons learned, Wendy, that I think didn't we see early on too, that some of the peers were tougher than even the facilitators might have been. And so
Yes.
there's an interesting community aspect. That's one of the things I've liked about the circular economy credential as well, is that you have to do some reflection at times, and you're putting it out there in a community that can react to that. And you also get this opportunity to have a global conversation with people that are taking this micro-credential, all the way across the world. And so that's just another valuable way to get some peer feedback, as well as the assessments.
I've definitely seen the peers be stricter thing before, and it always makes me chuckle. Some of the students I used to see were brutal. But awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. So I actually selfishly have a bit of a question here. For of course, the moment I say that flew right out of my head. So I'm gonna go to someone else and hope that I remember it. But I now know all y'all, so I can just reach out to you. So Dora, this one's for you. But even anyone that's on the Boulder team, has a prospective employer ever reached out to Siemens to or the issuer of the credential, asking for more information about it, any additional details, or is all of the information that they should need available on that sort of like Credly page that you go to if you click the badge? Ooh.
I haven't had specific questions come at us that they couldn't answer there. It was more the feedback. I may have mentioned it was actually a large aerospace customer that's now using this as an onboarding program. So it was more like, hey, we'd like to look at this, and we'd like to see, could we really adopt this internally in our learning and development program? What does that look like, right? And so it's maybe just some of that conversation, look at what they already have and how this fits or can accelerate what they're trying to do.
That makes a lot of sense. I do want to call out a message we got from Michael Milligan, who I believe, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, is part of ABET as well. Just emphasizing the fact that this recognition of credential is not the same as an ABET accreditation for a 4-year program. The focus really is on the process of creating, presenting, and administering the credential. Right, the accreditations draw on several years of assessment data. That's not what you're doing for the micro-credentials. But ultimately making sure that the learners are getting what is advertised. Right. And of course, go check out the link that Stephanie had dropped in the chat for more information. But I think that's a really good point. There are so many places you can get a micro-credential. So I personally really appreciate, right, Dora, you had mentioned, right, from an industry perspective, being able to say, okay, we partnered with an educational institution, right, where you had people who are helping you design these assessments, maybe something that, right, certainly I have less experience with as someone from industry who's not trained in that area. But then also, I'm sure from the Boulder side, right, you mentioned it's nice to be able to partner with a company, make sure that you're targeting your topics in the right direction. So yeah, it's really nice to see.
And I do really think, this is where I think micro-credentials create that, credentials have been around for some time, but we have not had the quality assurance there. And so that's where I really do applaud ABET going down this road. And to Michael's point, yes, this is very different than that full accreditation. But having now this quality assurance there and a more agile approach, it allows both industry and academia to partner and come together to co-create what engineering education looks like going forward. And so it's really, to me, kind of given us that path or that new currency for how we're all going to collaborate going forward.
Absolutely. I remembered my question. Very proud of myself. So have you, and actually, Dora, it's similar to what you said, where you had a company reach out and say, hey, can we look at your assessment in detail to see if it fits into our onboarding? Have you had any academic institutions reach out saying, hey, I want to include this as a portion of like my semester long curriculum? Have you
Yeah.
had, right? Obviously, there's the existing course, but if you had any other institutions reach out.
Yeah, so it's, one, when you put things on Coursera, right, it's out there for a large audience. And so schools that have Coursera for campus, there's some who have already started to, embed and implement that in their curriculum. We've heard from some that don't have Coursera. And so we're starting to look at, hey, what's the platform play to try to provide this to those that don't have it. So yeah, we've had a number of schools that are starting to really see where they can embed this, and ideally both circular economy or expedite skills for industry. We've seen it across those two topics of wanting to drive some curricular change now that these credentials are recognized.
Great. That's awesome. Um, we've got time for like one more question. So anyone wants to sneak one in? I'm watching all of the chats. I think then we'll just call it here. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you, Dora, Christy, Kayla, Wendy, Stephanie, Shane, Tanya, Alex, for joining us, for helping us run this webinar. It's been great. Thank you so much to everyone who attended and was participating in the chat. As a moderator, that makes my life so much easier when y'all are participating and engaged. And it's really great to see how interested people are in this topic. So with that, I want to wish you all a excellent St. Patrick's Day. Please be be on the lookout to join us for our webinar talking about college industry partnerships on May 19th, Stephanie, 17th, 19th.
May 19th. Yep, 1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. Eastern time. As I said, we'll post on our LinkedIn. It'll be sent out via some ASEE emails as well. But yeah, have fabulous days, everyone.
Thank you.